Hey, boys and girls. So here is our chapter from Edward Tulane. When we left Edward, he had been accidentally thrown overboard off of the cruise ship. The boys were playing, tossing him back and forth, and Abilene got upset and tackled the boy, and Edward went overboard and fell into the ocean. So that is where we are picking up with chapter 6. Chapter 6 is a very short chapter. There's your preview picture, chapter 6. That's Edward's boater hat that he had on. How does a China rabbit die? Can a China rabbit drown? Is my hat still on my head? These were the questions that Edward asked himself as he went sailing out over the blue sea. The sun was high in the sky, and from what seemed to be a very long way away, Edward heard Abilene call his name. Edward! She shouted. Come back! Come back? Of all the ridiculous things to shout, thought Edward. As he tumbled ears over tail through the air, he managed to catch one last glimpse of Abilene. She was standing on the rail of the deck, holding onto the railing with one hand. In her other hand was a lamp. No, it was a ball of fire. No, Edward realized, it was his gold pocket watch that Abilene held in her hand. She was holding it up high, and it was reflecting the light of the sun. My pocket watch, he thought. I need that. And then Abilene disappeared from view, and the rabbit hit the water with such tremendous force that his hat blew off his head. That answers that question, thought Edward, as he watched the hat dance away on the wind. And then he began to sink. He sank and sank and sank. He kept his eyes open the whole time, not because he was brave, but because he had no choice. His painted-on eyes witnessed the blue water turning to green and then to blue again. They watched as it finally became as black as night. Edward went down and down. So you can see the picture there of the ship, the great big cruise ship, and then you can see Edward there as he sinks down into the ocean. He said to himself, if I'm going to drown, certainly I would have done so by now. Far above him, the ocean liner with Abilene aboard it sailed blithely on, and the China rabbit landed finally on the ocean floor, face down, and there, with his head in the muck, he experienced his first genuine and true emotion. Edward Tulane was afraid. So we know that he went overboard, and that was just kind of illustrating what happened to him immediately after. Chapter 7's preview picture. If you can't tell, that's a really, really, really giant ocean wave. So take a second and think what this chapter might be about. All right, here we go, chapter 7. He told himself that certainly Abilene would come to find him. This, Edward thought, is much like waiting for Abilene to come home from school. I will pretend that I'm in the dining room of the house on Egypt Street, waiting for the little hand to move to the 3 and the big hand to move to the 12. If only I had my watch, then I would know for sure. But it doesn't matter. She will be here soon, very soon. What do you think? Do you think Abilene's going to come rescue him? We still have a lot of journey to read. What do you think? Hours passed, and then days, and weeks, and months. Abilene did not come. Edward, for lack of anything better to do, began to think. He thought about the stars. He remembered what they looked like from his bedroom window. What made them shine so brightly, he wondered, and were they still shining somewhere, even though he could not see them? What do you think? Do stars still shine, even if we can't see them? Think about a cloudy night. Are the stars still there? Never in my life, he thought, have I been farther away from the stars than I am now. He considered, too, the fate of the beautiful princess who had become a warthog. Why had she become a warthog? Because the ugly witch turned her into one, that's why. And then the rabbit thought about Pellegrina. He felt in some way that he could not explain to himself that she was responsible for what had happened to him. It was almost as if she, and not the boys who had thrown Edward overboard. She was like the witch in the story. No, she was the witch in the story. True, she did not turn him into a warthog, but just the same, she was punishing him, although for what he could not say. On the 297th day of Edward's ordeal, a storm came. 297 days he's been at the bottom of the ocean. A year, 12 months, has 365 days in it. So he's been at the bottom of the ocean almost a year. The storm was so powerful that it lifted Edward off the ocean floor and led him in a crazy, wild, spinning dance. The water pummeled him and lifted him up and shoved him back down. Help! Edward thought. The storm and its ferocity actually flung him all the way out of the sea, and the rabbit glimpsed for just a moment the light of an angry and bruised sky. The wind rushed through his ears. Have you ever seen a storm? The sky during a storm when the lightning is lighting up the sky, but it's behind clouds and it's dark and it's green and yellow and purple. That's what they're talking about, is a sky like that. It sounded to him like Pellegrina laughing, but before he had time to appreciate being above water, he was tossed back down into its depths. Up and down, back and forth he went until the storm wore itself out, and Edward saw that he was beginning again his slow descent to the ocean floor. Oh, help me, he thought. I can't go back there. Help me. But still down he went, down, down, down. And then suddenly a great wide net grabbed the rabbit. The net lifted him higher and higher until there was an almost unbearable explosion of light, and Edward was back in the world, lying on the deck of a ship surrounded by fish. So think about if you've ever seen the movie Finding Nemo, towards the end when Marlin and Nemo get caught in the fishing net with all the fish, and they're telling them to swim down, so that they can pull the net back down into the ocean. It's that kind of a net that he got caught up in. "Eh, what's this?" said a voice. "Ain't no fish," said the other voice. "That's for sure." The light was so brilliant that it was hard for Edward to see. But finally, shapes appeared out of the light, and then faces. And Edward realized that he was looking up at two men, one young and one old. "Looks like some toy," said the grizzled old man. He bent down and picked Edward up and held him by his front paws, considering him. "A rabbit, I reckon. It's got whiskers and rabbit ears, and it's the shape of rabbit ears, at least." "Yeah, sure, rabbit toy," said the young man, and he turned away. "I'll take it home to Nellie. Let her fix it up and set it to rights. Give her some child." The old man placed Edward carefully on a crate, positioning him so that he was sitting up and he could look out at the sea. Edward appreciated the courtesy of this small gesture, but he was heartily sick of the ocean and would have been satisfied never to set eyes on it again. "There you go," said the old man. As they made their way back to the shore, Edward felt the sun on his face and the wind blowing through the little bit of fur left on his ears, and something filled his chest. A wonderful feeling. He was glad to be alive. "Look at that rabbit," said the old man. "Looks like he's enjoying the ride, don't it?" "Ah, yep," said the young man. In fact, Edward Tulane was so happy to be among the living that he didn't even take umbrage at being referred to as it. And remember, he got really upset because Abeline's mother had called him an it when he got sucked up into the vacuum cleaner, and it really bothered him and hurt his feelings. So He's not even upset at being called in it. He's just so thankful to be out of the bottom of the ocean. Here's our preview picture for chapter 8. Be thinking on what could be happening with him. There's a picture of the old man that kind of rescued him. And there's a picture of Edward after a year at the bottom of the ocean. So be thinking what could happen next. I am so excited, and I hope that you are loving Edward's journey and getting to know Edward and what he's up to. He's one of those characters that really, really grows as the story goes on, and he kind of evolves into a different kind of character than what he started as. So I can't wait to share the rest of the book with you. Keep checking in, and I'll see you guys later.